The following is a presentation of Paramount WorkPlace's requisition solution. WorkPlace is a web-based application. All of the users that log in do so via their browser. I'm using Chrome as my preferred browser, and we also support Safari, Firefox, as well as Internet Explorer. I'm going to enter my username and password for FOI and log in to the WorkPlace application. When you log into WorkPlace, you're presented with a dashboard that's designed to be a high-level overview of information that's important to you as a user, and also allows you to immediately begin using catalogs to shop and then create a requisition. FOI as a user has the ability to enter requisitions for goods and services, and also has the ability to receive purchase orders that have been created that he has access to. In addition, you can view any announcements that have been presented to the user. You have your outstanding transactions. These transactions will show up here if at least one line on the requisition has not been fully processed. And when that's the case, you'll see the requisition here. You'll see a name of the requisition, a status of the requisition. If different lines have different statuses, you'll see where those are in the process. If they're waiting for approval, you'll see who they're waiting for approval from. And if you needed more information or more details on any of these transactions, you can click, open them up, and there's a details log available for each line. Here in the middle of the screen are the catalogs that you can shop. There's two types of catalogs. There's internal catalogs and there's external catalogs. Internal catalogs would be ones that you set up and maintain on your own. Maybe you can get a download from the vendor, or you can also manually enter the information to create the catalog. Since they are your catalogs, they can have whatever items you want to have on them. They could be by vendor, by location, by department, by type of item. Click to select the catalog, and you can see pictures and descriptions and pricing of items. You could categorize items, search for and find items. Click on an item to see additional information and additional details, and add items to your cart. Continue shopping that same catalog or other catalogs. Add more items to your cart. When you're done shopping, view your cart, update any quantities, remove any lines that you no longer need, and then click on Create Order Requisition. And the user's experience could be as simple as that. In other words, you could simply use the catalog to pick the items, enter the quantities, and then create a requisition and be done as a user from that standpoint. As soon as you click on Create Order Requisition, it would then submit that, route for approval before a purchase order can be created. But we've got several other ways that you can put items onto a requisition that we're going to cover as a part of this demonstration, and we'll walk through those. The next method is what's called punch out. So with punch out, the vendor maintains the catalogs for you as their customer. I've got Office Depot as a punch out vendor. I'll click there. This is now going to go out to the Office Depot site. Again, this is the site that they maintain for me as their customer based upon the items and the pricing that we've negotiated. I can search for and find the items using my different options here. I can search by keyword and by item number to find what I want. Once I find what I'm looking for, I can enter a quantity, add those to my cart, continue shopping, add more items to my cart. When I'm done shopping, I check out. And when I check out, that item or items is now pulled onto the requisition. There's my 5 dozen ballpoint stick pins from Office Depot. That order is not complete yet. That order will not be complete until a purchase order is created. And when the purchase order is created, it'll be sent electronically to the vendor. That will complete the transaction, and then they will ship you those items. You've also got shopping list. Now, a shopping list is a favorites list. It's for regularly requested items, monthly office supply order, job, event, project, or even a vendor. These lists can be set up by user, by department, or made available system-wide. If you have access to a list, you'll see it in the drop down here. Click to select the list that you want to use, and this is a list we would typically use when we need something for a computer. We'll get 2 of those, 1 keyboard, 1 LaserJet printer. Enter quantities into those fields, load those items. Those items are now loaded onto the requisition. You can shop other lists if needed and continue to add items to the requisition, but that's a quick and easy way, especially for regularly requested items, to be entered here. You could also import requisitions in a CSV template format that we provide. You could duplicate requisitions, pull up a past requisition, duplicate it as new, make any changes, additions, or deletions, and then submit that requisition. You can come into the body of the requisition and you can use the item field here. This could simply be a lookup to an item master, which would just be a list of items that you maintain to find and search through, to select and then enter a quantity for on the requisition to ultimately create a purchase order. It could also be items that you are maintaining in inventory. We have an inventory module where you can set up and maintain inventory for consumable purposes. That way you could request items to create a purchase order for that inventory. You could also transfer items from location to location, and you can fulfill items from within inventory rather than create a PO, all from the same requisition. So again, that is the item field within the requisition that can be used a couple of different ways depending upon your requirements and your needs for inventory. The last line we'll put in is cleaning services, and if we needed 2 hours of cleaning services, we can type that in. If that's all you know, that's fine. It's a valid line on the requisition because we met the required fields. Now, if we know more information, we could put in additional information. So I could come in here and I could select a general ledger account, and that general ledger account would be a part of the line if I'm allowed to select those. Now, you can make other fields required. I mentioned that item description and quantity are the minimum required fields. If you wanted to make location or vendor or GL account or expense type required, then you could make those fields required as well. They'd have an asterisk next to them just like these do. And again, you must enter information into those fields before you could successfully submit the requisition. So that's a requisition with 8 different lines on it. Now, we entered those in several different ways. Please keep in mind that when you enter items onto a requisition, you might use all of those methods. Different users might use different methods. You might only use one of those methods depending upon your requirements within your organization. We are a very flexible solution and provide many different ways to get the information entered, with the ultimate goal of being able to submit the requisition, have it route for approval before a PO can be created. Now, we can provide additional information on this requisition at this point. Up here at the top, there's a name field. So everything on this requisition was for the same purpose: monthly office supply order, job, event, project, or maybe even a remodel of an office on the 5th floor. Type that in. At a glance, other users will know what this requisition is for, and it's also a field that you can query and look up on as well. In addition to the name of the requisition, there's also comments that can be entered for each line. There's a vendor comment where I could say, I need these as soon as possible. That vendor comment can be viewed by any of the other users who have access to the requisition. It can also flow over to the purchase order and print on the purchase order depending upon your setup and requirements. There's also internal comments. Internal comments are typically used for additional information, longer descriptions, special instructions, or justification of why you're making the request. So you can say that these are for the office that is next to the elevator, just down from the stairwell, whatever else it is that you need to say to provide those internal details on that particular line. You'll see that an icon appears next to the line when it has a comment associated with it. And if I move up here to my 1 gigahertz processor, you'll see that both the comment fields are blank. And I can have a totally different vendor comment as well as a totally different internal comment there. There's our icon next to that line. And other users can view those icons and know that there's a comment associated there. You've also got header comments. Header comments up here on the upper right-hand side. Click and enter a comment that would apply to the entire requisition. And you've also got blank paper clips next to each line and a blank paper clip at the header. That allows you to attach files to the requisition. Click on the blank paper clip, browse the drives that you have access to, select a Word document, a PDF file, an Excel spreadsheet, describe that, and attach that to the requisition. You'll see the icon changes to a paper clip around a piece of paper. That's how you know that there's an attachment there. You also see our inline attachment view. So you can actually view the attachment on the right-hand side of the screen without having to click and drill down. You can have attachments for each line, and you can have multiple attachments for each line as well. You've also got header attachments up here on the upper right-hand side. Click there. choose the appropriate file that applies at the header level to the entire requisition, describe that, and now attach that to the requisition. So we've got a requisition here again that has 8 different lines. We've now provided additional information and additional details with attachments at both the line level and at the header level. As the requisition flows through, you're going to be able to know that there's comments and attachments based upon the icon changes. You're also going to be able to see the attachments in the inline view and have access to the information right there on the screen. We could submit this requisition and we would now be able to route it for approval, but there's some other key components I want to point out on the requisition before we do that. Each line of the requisition not only has individual comments available, but it also has the general tab that is specific to the line. So you'll see as I click and highlight different lines, the information on the general tab changes. You can have different vendors, different general ledger accounts, different locations, different expense types. You can enter expense types here on the requisition as well. And the expense type is a field that allows you to have specific questions get answered about what it is that you're requesting. We already looked at the comments, and the comments are free form entry. They're not necessarily required, and of course the user could put in whatever information they wanted to put in. But with the expense types, you can define questionnaires. So I have a questionnaire here for our line 7, and I need to come in and put in, well, what's the screen size that I want for that computer? How much RAM, hard drive, is it a solid state drive, and then any additional requirements. So I can require the user to put in this information so that it helps me as an approver or as a buyer know exactly what it is that they want. These questionnaires are very easy to set up and configure by you within the system. They can be drop downs, they can be check marks, they can be numeric or alphanumeric entries. You can provide hints as to what it is that you want to see here. But again, it's just a way to be able to collect specific information about the lines on the requisition above and beyond the comments that can be entered. Also down here at the bottom of the screen, you've got some more things that you can do. There's a mass line change. We talked about each line having its own general tab and the information being specific to the line, but you can also have every line on the requisition have the same details and the same information. You could have duplicated the requisition, you could have duplicated the line, or you also use the mass line change here to put in a value and then update all of the lines on the requisition. You've also got GL budgets. So you've got GL budgets that you can set up and maintain so that by line you'd be able to see the budget information as it relates to the general ledger. If you go over budget, you can get a warning that you're over budget, and you can also route for approval based upon being over budget as well. You've also got GL distributions. The GL distributions allow you to distribute an individual line to multiple GL accounts. Remember, each line can have its own main or primary GL account, but then at the line level, you can distribute by amount or percent or by predefined distribution groups so that that individual line can be distributed to more than one general ledger account. So those are some of the other things that you can do here on the requisition and some of the additional information that can be provided. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to submit the requisition and talk about the approval processes. So when you submit the requisition, it will route for approval based upon the details that have been entered. There are unlimited levels of approval, unlimited approval paths. So you can have as many approvers as you need approve these requisitions before a purchase order can be created. And the approvals can be very simple and very straightforward. They can be based upon the position that you are within the organization and the threshold that you have the ability to request or approve up to. So based upon who you are within the company, then the approval routings can be very easily set up when your security rights are defined as a user. You can also define who the supervisor is for the user, and it can go to their supervisor for their approval as well. So again, you're approving based upon the position, the user, and then the overall dollar amount of the requisition. It's very straightforward and very easy to set up. You can also get much more detailed with your approvals, and you can approve based upon line item information. We've talked about the ability to have different lines, have different information within the same requisition, so it becomes very important to support the approval routing rules based upon those details. You've got departments, locations, vendors, GL accounts, expense types that can be used to route for approval. You've got the currency that you can use to route for approval if you have multi-currency environments. You got the amount of the requisition line or the amount of the total requisition that can be used to route for approval. So route to the department manager because of the department. Route to IT because it's computer hardware or computer software related. Route to finance because of the amount. Route to the controller because you're over budget. And again, unlimited levels of approval, unlimited approval paths. And you can actually view information about the requisition at this point by clicking on the details. The details will show you a status of the requisition. It'll show you the approval path of the requisition. And you can see that Lisa and Bob need to approve that particular requisition line. Again, there's unlimited levels of approval. So if there were more than the 2 approvers that I have here, you would see the entire list of approvals. The arrow and the bold print indicate the pending approver, which is who we're waiting on to approve this before it can move on through the process. You've also got alternate approvers. Alternates can approve in the place of the original approver, and if an alternate had been enabled or activated, you would see who that was and know that they could approve in Lisa or Bob's place if they're out of the office or unavailable for any reason. And you've also got a log, which is date, time, user, and action of everything that happens to that requisition line as it flows through the process. So you've always got the ability to come back in and see where your requisitions are, what has happened to them, what needs to happen to them as they flow through each of the different steps. So we'll now log out as our requester, and we'll talk a little bit more about the approval processes and the email notification that the approver gets. So the approver is going to get an email letting them know that they have requisitions that are pending their approval. They can see the details, the comments, and there's links in the email. Click on the link, it'll take you into WorkPlace and allow you to approve or disapprove the requisitions that are available to you. You can also reply to this message. If you reply to this message, there are brackets in the email. At a header level, if you put a Y into the bracket, you're going to approve everything in the message. If you put an N, you would disapprove everything. And you can also go in at the line level, put a Y to approve, put an N to disapprove, and you can also enter notes to the requester, and those notes will go in an email and also appear on the log. So you can actually send this reply and approve or disapprove the lines on the requisition without logging into the WorkPlace application. And yes, if you get the email on your mobile device, then you have the ability to reply, enter the text entries for Y, N, as well as notes, and then approve from the email on your mobile device. You can also approve from within your browser window. So we'll log in as Lisa. Lisa's one of our approvers. And Lisa has a to-do list and has 14 requisitions pending approval. Click there, you get a load screen. The load screen allows you to be selective and load by these values here, or just click on load and you'll load all items pending your approval. Expand the requisition that you want to work with, and there are your comment and attachment indicators, also your questionnaire indicator on the line. You can view the general tab information and the actual comments that was entered, and you've got your inline attachment view over here on the right hand side. So the approvers can see all of the information that's been entered and use that information to decide whether or not they're going to approve or disapprove the lines on the requisition. Approvers can also be allowed to edit requisitions. You do not have to allow your approver the ability to edit. If all you want them to do is approve or disapprove, that's fine. If you do allow them to edit, though, they can come into the requisition. They could add information or change information. So, for example, we could add a vendor. There's a change log that will record those changes, who made them, when they made them, what they changed it from, and what they changed it to. So you'll always have an audit trail of those changes. You've also got a note to the requester. Use this icon to enter a note and tell them about any changes that you made, any comments that you might have, and any instructions that you want to provide. Those will go on an email and also appear on the log for that line. When you're ready to approve, you can approve all or disapprove all, which would affect everything in the session. You could also approve or disapprove at the header of the requisition, and you can approve at the line level by clicking on the check mark, disapprove by clicking on the minus button. If you disapprove, use your note to the requester to tell them why you disapproved. And we're going to tell them in this instance to find a cheaper printer and resubmit. That'll go in an email and also appear on the log. When you disapprove a line, it goes back to the original requester with those notes. When you approve a line, it will move on through the process to the next approver if there is one, or be available for review and ultimately create a purchase order. So we'll click on process, and again, those items are either approved and they'll move on, or disapproved and they'll go back to the original requester with those notes. At this point, more email notifications will go out. You'll get an email letting you know that items were approved with any comments or notes that have been entered. You can also get an email letting you know that items were disapproved, why they were disapproved, with a link in those emails. So those are two more emails that can go out to the different users, keeping them up to date with what's going on with their requisitions as they flow through the process. Last thing on approvers is alternates. Alternates can approve in the place of the original approver. So I can come in here and I can slide that button to the right, and I have now enabled my alternates. I'm not picking who they are. That's done as a part of the setup of the approval process. I'm simply enabling them so that they can approve while I'm out of the office or unavailable. I can also schedule my alternates with from and to dates, and they can approve during those periods of time. And you can set up multiple from and to dates there as well. So if you know when you're going to be out of the office and unavailable, then your approvers would be activated on that schedule. If you forget to activate your alternates, or you do not schedule your alternates, a system administrator can activate the alternates on your behalf. And again, alternates can approve in the place of the original approver and keep items moving through the process if someone's out of the office or unavailable for any reason. We're going to log out as Lisa. We're going to log in as Ben. Ben is a reviewer. The reviewer is typically a buyer or a purchasing agent within the organization. They're the final step in the process before the purchase orders are created. Ben's got 22 items that are pending his review. We'll click there. You'll get a load screen. The load screen allows you to be selected by these values or ranges of those values. Click on load. You'll load everything that's pending your review. Expand the requisition. This is going to be very similar to what we saw on the approval side, in that you can view the information that's a part of the requisition. You have the icons that notify you if there's comments, attachments, or questionnaires. You have your inline attachment view on the right hand side, and the reviewer can also edit to add information that might be missing. So if a vendor is missing, again, you can add the vendor, you can add the general ledger account code. You can scroll through the items and make sure that the information is correct prior to processing to create a purchase order. When you're ready to order, you can order all. You can also order by entire requisition, or you can order individual lines. Click on the check mark to indicate that you want to order a line. Leave the item on hold with the pause button, or cancel with the minus button. If you cancel, you can use your note to the requester to tell them why you're canceling. You can either manually type in the information, or you can select from predefined notes, like more information is required for this item, and that'll go in an email and also appear on the log. You can also still enter notes on any of the other lines as well. Tell them something like order sooner next time, and that'll go in an email and also appear on the log. And when you're done, click on process. And when you click on process, you're now going to generate purchase orders. So you're going to generate purchase orders unless you leave something out. If you do not put necessary or required information to create the PON, then you'll get a warning at the top of the screen, a warning on the requisition, and a warning on the line. And then we simply need to come in here, put in a shipping method, and then that would be the information that was missing. Just so you know, if we were missing multiple pieces of information, it would show you what else was missing, and then it would indicate that on the lines as well. So now that we've corrected that, click on process, and now we're going to create purchase orders. So we're going to create purchase orders from the fully approved requisitions. And once those purchase orders are created, you have several different options. First off, you can see the purchase orders that were generated, and we generated 2 purchase orders from that requisition. You can view or print those purchase orders. Click on View Print. This uses Crystal Reports, and it presents the PO to you in a PDF format. Since it does use Crystal Reports, you could add logos, add terms and conditions, or even change the layout. You can also automatically email the purchase order to the vendor in that same PDF format. If it was a punch-out purchase order, as this one was to Office Depot, then it is creating the purchase order and also sending that purchase order electronically via CXML. And that would complete the requisition to PO process from within the WorkPlace application. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. There's also an additional presentation on the purchase order management, receiving, and invoice matching that you can watch to understand the entire procurement process available within WorkPlace. From watching the requisition demonstration, you've already seen where a reviewer can create purchase orders from fully approved requisitions. So if we log back in as our reviewer, who was Ben, we go in and take a look at a previous review session, you'll remember that from within the review session, you can create purchase orders from those fully approved requisitions, and then you're able to view or print the purchase order from within WorkPlace. You're able to automatically email the purchase order to the vendor in the same PDF format, and if it's a punch-out item, then you're able to create the PO, and also the PO will be sent electronically to the vendor. That will complete the transaction, and then they will ship you those items. So from within WorkPlace, you do not need to go into the purchase order module. You can send and deliver the purchase orders from within the WorkPlace product, either manually, or it can also happen automatically via email, or again via punch out. If you do need to go in and view the purchase orders from within WorkPlace, then you would simply go to the purchase order, find purchase order, or grab the one that you want to look at, and then that will show you the information here on the screen. You've got the details that are here at the header or top of the screen. You've got the line details, which include the general tab, and the comments that should be familiar from the requisitions that we created earlier. And this is the purchase order that if you need to make changes, you could do a change order and make any necessary changes to this PO. If you do a change order, the approval routing process will still apply. You can have approval routing rules based upon changes that are done, so that you'd have to have that be approved before you could print the revised purchase order. You also have the ability to create new purchase orders directly within the WorkPlace purchase order module without using a requisition. The created by source in this example would say manual if you created the purchase order manually. If you create the purchase order from review, meaning fully approved requisitions, then it'll say review. But if you wanted to create a purchase order here without a requisition, you can. And there's also approval routing rules available for the purchase order, so you can have those route for approval before it'd be available to print and send out to the vendor. The next step after the creation of the purchase order is receiving. So we'll log out as Ben. We're going to log back in as Foy, who is our original requester, and we're going to allow that user to do the receiving. You do not have to allow the requesters to do the receiving. It can be done by anyone that you choose based upon their setup within WorkPlace security. It makes sense often for the user to be able to receive the goods that they've requested. So we've created a receiving wizard, which will allow you to come in and then find the PO that you want to receive, load that PO, or you could also load multiple POs, view the information that's a part of this receiving wizard session. We ordered one of these HP 600 series and we received one. If there had been multiple quantities, then we could receive a partial quantity, which would do a partial receipt. You could come back in later and receive the remaining amount, or you could also cancel the remaining quantities if you needed to. You can enter comments, so you got the ability to enter comments for this session. You could attach a file, so if you click on attachments, you could browse and choose a packing slip, and you could describe that and then attach that to this session so that the packing slip is part of the overall transaction. Click on the checkbox, click on process, and you have now done the receiving. So all we did there was actually indicate that we had received the shipment. You still need to do the invoice matching process to complete procurement. So we're going to log out as Foy, we're going to log in as Phil, and Phil has the ability to do invoice matching. So we're going to click, go to a receive match invoice session. You'll see that Phil could do a receipt, which is similar to what we just did in the receiving wizard with Foy. He could do an invoice to match to a previous receipt, or he could do a receipt invoice to do a match to the shipment in a single step. We'll pick invoice. We'll pick our vendor, which was CTI Computers, and then we could select the PO information down here on the line. We could load a specific PO, or we can also just simply click on load. When you click on load, it'll show you all of the available purchase orders that you have to match. Pick the one or ones that you want to pick, load those. That information is now loaded onto the session for this particular invoice match. You can input the vendor document number so that that is a part of the transaction. You can attach a file, click on attachments, go and find a scanned image of the invoice, describe that, and now that is a part of this transaction. Review the information, take a look at the GL budgets, do GL distributions, whatever you need to do prior to submitting, and then once you submit, that transaction could then route for approval if there are approval routing processes need based upon the variance in the quantity, the variance in the amount. So the approval processes apply here as well. So from the entire procurement process, from the entry of the requisition, creation of the PO, receiving and invoice matching, we always maintain very robust approval routing rules so that you can make sure that the transactions are approved wherever they are entered or wherever they are changed. Thank you very much for attending the presentation of the procurement portion of Paramount WorkPlace, and if we could be of further assistance, please let us know.